Well, back in London, and actually my screen is working now, so hopefully you can all see me. I am absolutely delighted that we have Urvashi here with us today. Urvashi is an absolute treasured member of Rare Dementia Support. She's the caregiver to her husband who's living with semantic dementia and a devoted mother as well. She's an executive and career coach, and she is a laughter yoga facilitator for promoting well-being. Prior to FTD coming into their lives, Urvashi led a very successful career in business and HR as head of HR at several prestigious finance companies here in London. Now, we're really lucky because Urvashi has given much of her valuable time supporting RDS over the years, with welcoming new caregivers entering the situation and taking part in many of our educational videos. She's also a regular speaker at our support group meetings. So I am absolutely delighted that she is here with us today to give you some of her lived experience. Thank you, Urvashi.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, Nikki. I should start with my talk with a bit of a health warning. I'm genuinely a very optimistic person, so I don't want to make people feel that everything's all rosy. But the only way I can cope and live with this life with my husband is being eternally optimistic. And that's what's kept me going. So you might find that I tend to take the positive view on most things. But that's just kind of putting out there in case it does not resonate with anyone. Right. My talk is about, caring for my husband during this challenging period of coronavirus and how that's affected me as a caregiver and also my husband. But I don't want to dwell too much on the coronavirus and its implications on people and society generally, because I think there's so much out there. There'll be movies made about this. There's research. There's so much things written on everywhere, every media channel you can think about. But I think the key points of coronavirus, which are applicable for FTDs, it's a huge tragedy. It devastates people's life. It's a sickness. These are things that people are having to grapple globally. And it's just tragedy. When you think about FTD, we've had our own private tragedy, or coronavirus, as I call it. We've had our own coronavirus for many years in my life. We call it FTD. And therefore, we have basically been, we have had to deal with our own challenges in this way. Well, what coronavirus, the journey has helped on my husband is some of the challenges that most people will feel, they're more exacerbated in our case. So things like social distancing, putting on the mask, just being aware of what's happening, that is much more difficult for my husband. So when we go out, even for walks, I have to be very guarded that he doesn't offend people. So we had challenges when we go for walks that he doesn't know what's happening and he might not keep his distance. But again, that's a small point. But what was really painful was the isolation that people with FTD feel. That almost became complete with this coronavirus because, you can't go out, you can't do the usual activities, you can't go to day center, you can't go shopping center. So that made a thing like, oh my God, this is really challenging. But one thing I did notice about when FTD first struck us was, as human beings, we have a number of aspects of our lives. And when you have FTD, all those aspects get narrower and narrower and narrower. So you have your work life, you have your friends, you have your family, you have your sports. For most people, these are the different aspects of their life. But people with FTD, the world gets narrower and narrower and narrower. And ultimately, all you're left with is your family. And sometimes you don't even have that at an extended level. So we have already experienced this. The narrowing of the world has already been something we've undergone. So in some way, I think we've got an advantage. It's not something I want to kind of recommend, but we have an advantage that we know what it feels like when your world gets narrower and narrower and you become isolated. So we've experienced that. So that I was kind of almost like, we've already felt this. One other good thing that came out from this coronavirus was Zoom. For a caregiver, it was quite useful because I had all this access to these meetings and forums. You can go on online. You need to leave your home. And that made life much more bearable for me. So the world became more accessible in a strange way, even though physically you were kind of excluded. A bit of a dilemma there. But at the same time, my husband could not participate in the Zoom meetings or anything. So that felt the usual dilemma of a caregiver. Oh, I'm having this great experience on Zoom, but my husband doesn't have it. So therefore, that guilt and all this stuff, you kind of experience that. And for me, I don't, my husband lives with me, and we want to continue doing that. And I had some sort of respite through family, friends, and some other people who came here and there on a casual basis. But I had to let all that kind of came to an end. So all the whole burden of caring fell on my shoulders. And it was quite sort of claustrophobic, that, oh my God, there's nobody else to look after, just me 24/7. And I did feel rather kind of drained by the whole experience. But then I knew that nothing's going to change. This is the period we're experiencing. Nothing's going to change. So I'm going to have to relook how we do this. So it did make me more innovative. So we started playing the piano, which we never did. We got a piano, we started playing the piano. We started doing lots of walks. We discovered we can go to cemetery, because cemetery is a place where not many people go for walks. So we discovered walk cemetery. And in a bizarre way, you kind of learn to cherish the living. Walking around all these dead people in the past, it can have a profound impact on your psyche that all these people died. And then actually, yeah, life is precious. And I still have my husband with me, and we're able to do these walks. So that kind of made me feel like, yeah, actually, life isn't that bad. We can still walk these cemeteries. The biggest challenge I had was the quality of care that my husband needed. As a caregiver, you try to do the best you can. But with FTD, because they're not cooperative, my husband would not let me look at his mouth. And therefore, he had extreme pain in his mouth. And I didn't know what it was. And I couldn't get the care he needed because everything was locked down. And therefore, it was very difficult. In the end, after sort of a lot of going through huge red tape and bureaucracy, I got King's Hospital in London. And there were 2 consultants who had to sedate him to give the treatment. So I knew now the journey for my husband, he's been regressing, that he's not able to cooperate at all. So that was painful to watch. Again, another thing I had to experience was just getting the financial help that my husband needed for his pension. I won't go into great details, but I don't know if anybody's watched the film Erin Brockovich. I felt like Erin Brockovich taking on this massive household insurance company in the UK. They're huge, and the policies they had were discriminatory against disabled people. I unearthed that as I was trying to get pension, and I could not believe the response I was getting. I was saying, look, your policies are discriminatory. Just do the right thing. Let's get it over and done with. But the red tape I got in convincing that they were doing something wrong was horrendous. In the end, I had to write the CEO, and we did actually get the policy change. But the fact that I had to fight all these battles just to get some money from the pension my husband paid was very, very alarming and disturbing. But it makes you realize if you don't fight for things, there are a lot of things out there which need to be challenged. Going back to my kind of analogy with FTD and the coronavirus at large and the parallels it has. When people with coronavirus and they go through, you look at all these people on media sites, they say, oh, this disease has really put our lives on a perspective. We now know what's important. All the stuff we were living in, perhaps, a lot of things we don't need. We don't need to cut our hair. We can cut our hair ourselves. So people have reflected on their lives and they got some sort of perspective, what that is. And I thought about it as I had that 10 years ago when my husband had FTD. Because when you're a caregiver to someone with FTD, your life is turned upside down. It is devastating. It is a tragedy, not just for yourself and for the loved one, but also your larger family. My sons were affected by this. So we did how to put things in perspective. What is important to us? What's our priority? And it kind of shakes you to the core. It's not just like, oh, we'll make some changes here and there. You kind of decide, what are my values as a human being? So if you're caring for someone, like my husband, I said, what is my role as a wife to my husband? Is just taking sort of care of him at a practical level, which of course is extremely important. Or do I want to go deeper than that, be a partner in the sense, do the best I can for him? So you do have to think about these things quite deeply when you're struck with FTD. So these are the questions I had to wrestle before coronavirus. And they were uncomfortable questions. And I had to look at them very honestly. What was my role in my husband's life? And it's not always easy choices you have to make. I had to continue to work because I had to look after my family and bring in the money. But what coronavirus has done is I've given up my job. So I'm now full-time complete carer. Alongside that, I do coaching and laughter yoga, as Nikki mentioned, to give me joy. But it does clarify your life, in some ways simplify it. So that's kind of on the upfront, it simplifies your life. And I've had time to reflect in this coronavirus period that how do I want to care for my husband? Practically, yes, it's important to do the best I can. I'm going back to the analogy of my husband wanting his treatment for his tooth decay and that it had to be extracted. At one point, I got so crazy thinking like, what do I need to do to get his teeth sorted? Because I'm not getting the care from the professionals because all the hospitals are shut and his tooth probably needs to be extracted. And I had this crazy idea. I said, what would I do if I was in the outback? It was just me and myself in a jungle and he had FTD and his tooth, I would have to extract it. And I was just reflecting on this. This is how bad things got for us in this journey that, if there was no hospitals, if there was nothing out there, what would I do with my husband? How would I take the best care for him? So it's kind of made me think about things in a very different light now, rather relying on, him going to a day center, him doing this. Because when that shuts, it's just me and him in the house. So that's what I reflected a lot. And I thought about the role of caregiving. And I'm sure a lot of research has been done on the role of a caregiver, how it should be done and shouldn't be done. We all know it's unpaid, it's unglamorous, it's often misunderstood, and a lot of negative connotations about the role of a caregiver. And I kind of bought into that view as well. I said, yeah, it's hard, it's challenging, it's hard, it doesn't pay you money, you give up a lot of your stuff. That's one perspective. Because I had time to think, I said, well, actually, do I choose to be a caregiver or am I forced to do this because there's nobody else doing it? And I had to look at this very honestly, because you do have options. I could put my husband in a home and make my life easier. I don't know whether it's easier or not, but it would be one thing I could consider. And I've always insisted I want my husband to stay with me because his life is important, he's great in our lives, and that brings its own challenges. And then I thought, we all have a choice. I have a choice to do it my way or do it the other way. And I thought, yes, caregiving is hard. I don't get paid for it. And I get a lot of stick for it. I get a lot of criticisms rather than support from lots of places. And I thought, actually, yes, that's true. But caregiving, I thought about, what am I doing? Because I was working in the corporate world and I coach people. And I try to look at the positive in a situation. I try to apply that same medicine to myself. So, well, actually, what's good about this caregiving role? And do I choose it? And I thought, yes, it's a role I've signed up for by choice, not because I'm compelled to do it, because there's no compulsion. I do have a choice. I choose to care for my husband. And if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be bloody brilliant at this and do the best of my ability. But I also had to reframe my head that actually it's not a demotion, because when I went to a party at Christmas time, this was a year ago, as soon as I realized I did not have an executive job and I'm just a caregiver, people stopped talking to me at the party. And I thought, this is crazy. Why have people stopped talking to me? Because they now think I haven't got the contacts in the business world and all I'm doing is caregiving for a man and it can't be that great. And I had to laugh at that situation, think actually, well, it's because I'm not selling the role. I'm not selling what I'm doing to the people. And I had to redefine that. I said, caregiving is a very profound role. It's a privilege. And it's not for the faint-hearted. And people who do this need to be given a lot of credit. And I thought that's one thing. I had to give myself a credit for this. And that's why in my profile, I say I have now reached a self-actualized career as a caregiver. I have reached the pinnacle of my career, not been demoted as many people see that. It's a promotion to be a caregiver, not a demotion. Because how many people do this without being paid and do it joyfully and do a wonderful job for the family, for themselves as a human being, but also for the world. So that's kind of my kind of view on that. Actually, caregiving role is a privilege and it's a pleasure, despite all the challenges it brings. And it's a choice that we have. One thing I do want to add on this is the self-care. Nikki supports us wonderfully and the organization. And one thing they do stress is, as a caregiver, you must have self-compassion and you must take care of yourself. These concepts have been kind of, familiar to me for many years since I've encountered this. But it's something I never really took on board, because my sort of focus was always like, on my husband, that, he's the one who hasn't got the cognition. He's the one who can't make decisions. He's the one who needs caring. And therefore the focus, rightly or wrongly, should be on him. So that's always been the case. But in the coronavirus period, I was actually quite ill for a period. And I thought, God, if I'm ill, I cannot take care of my husband. And the job that I really want to do well, and that's important, I won't be good for him or for anybody. So I kind of really looked at the concept of self-care. And I'm from Asian background, so there's a word I learned from my father. It's called hoonf, spelled H-O-O-N-F, hoonf. And I can't really find the good word to translate that into English, but it's more like comfort, but it's more deeper than that. It's like the comfort you get at the deepest level within you. And we all need that. We all need that. Even if you're a soldier and you're caring for your people and you kind of think you've got it all sorted out, every human being needs that oomph or comfort or that little thing that keeps them going. So my word is oomph. And that's where self-care comes in. So my son said to me, Mom, you were at your best when you were actually doing some yoga and going out and doing hot yoga. And he goes, you need to start that, because when you do that, you're good to yourself and good to everybody. And I thought, that wasn't the game-changing thing. But I started doing that, and it made a difference. So one thing I want to kind of reiterate to anybody listening on this call, if you are a caregiver, you do need to take this idea of self-compassion and caring for yourself really, really, very seriously. And I'm talking about experience, because I did not. Now that I'm doing that, I feel much more grounded. I feel more balanced and poised. It's not always the case, it's a journey. All this is a process. I have good days and bad days, but on balance, the coin, and the reason I've got the coin there is, there's two sides of looking at things: on balance and winning. And that's because I'm making myself a priority, because I count, because I'm doing a very important job in my family's life, in my husband's life, in my life. So therefore, it's important to do that. And whatever it is you need to do, whether it's going for yoga or spa, whatever it is, and it might not be the usual things that people kind of suggest. So they certainly weren't for me, because people said, go for a spa, get your nails done, get a haircut. And that was the last thing would make me feel. For me, it was emotional nurturing. For me, having a peace of mind, no matter where I am, whether I've got a haircut, whether I've grey hair or haven't combed my hair, if I've got peace of mind in my heart, I can take on the world. I can take on the world. And that's not easy to get. Having a peace of mind is quite hard to get. Sadly, it's very hard to get sometimes. And therefore, you need to nurture that within yourself. So in the coronavirus period, I was searching for that peace of mind. I tried meditation. I tried to go on various websites. I read books. But ultimately, I came to full circle. And I had to be at peace with myself. And I had to be very honest about my role as a caregiver. What am I committed to do and what am I not committed to do? And for every caregiver, it's going to be different. And everyone's capacity to give is going to be different. And my own capacity is different on different days. Some days I'm extremely amazing and loving and I can do anything. Some days I'm not particularly great and I can't do everything. And it's okay. And I give myself permission, it's okay. I'm doing the best I can and I'm doing a wonderful job. And I don't need any recognition from society at large or anybody but myself and my own measurement. So I have my own measurement on how am I doing. So that's really what I want to kind of say to you guys. But one thing I wanted to also say was the coronavirus has also put pressure on family and mental health. And I have witnessed that firsthand. So that has kicked off in my family, you know, the pressures. So things did not get easier. So you do have to deal with mental health and other issues that kind of on the wider world. But I went back and thinking like, people on FTD have already been sort of stripped bare of the sort of the niceties in life. We do have a perspective of what's important because we had to reflect on that. So we are in a better position to cope with this period. And I think that's kind of, I think we've got a lot of reasons to be cheerful in some ways and rejoice that we have actually taken stock of our lives by force or by choice. And therefore, a lot of the crap that we had in our lives, that was already gone. So for me, certainly, a lot of the things which did not serve me, I had to get rid of that because, you know, it was quite important to look after the 24-hour care my husband needed. And that required a lot of resources on my part. So that's one thing. The reason for the coin is the two sides to a coin. And I think coronavirus, FTD, or whatever your own journey you're going as a caregiver, there's always two sides to a coin. And whether you win or you lose, it's neither here or there. It's a process. It really is a process. And taking one day at a time is how I do this. And one thing I wanted to kind of think that was what has really won for me is, despite all challenges, I feel I'm much more attuned to my husband now because I've been thrown in this sort of close environment where there isn't a lot to do outside. Initially, it was claustrophobic and thinking, oh, God, there's too much. But then the more I started resisting that, I felt I'm more attuned to his needs and what he's thinking. And he surprises me with his insight. So, and I kind of had said, I want to be close to my husband. I want to make his life meaningful. So I had the opportunity of doing that. So I can't then complain and say, oh, actually, it's been tough. Yeah, there are days I do complain and it's tough. But on balance, I feel more closer. I get time to cherish him. I get to savor the moments because there's less distractions on our time because people can't just barge in. So you do have your bubble. And the bubble can be one where you actually, it works for you, it doesn't work for you. I've had to find very innovative ways of keeping you entertained, which I wouldn't normally do. I would have just kind of had a normal routine. Like, goes to day center, does this and that. But because I'm stuck with him, I thought, actually, how am I going to make this day fun? So we do lots of games. We're playing the piano. He plays piano terribly, and so do I. But we do that. I've found more other creative games in house with actually using vegetables. We feed the cows locally, which I hadn't done for the last 10 years. I saw these cows, never fed them, but we now feed them. We make that a daily routine. So there are other things we can actually look out for. And one thing we've tampered into is nature. Nature is always there. Hospitals can close, care things can close. Nature, trees and birds and animals are always out there. So we go for long walks in the country. And that's been our kind of healing. That's really what I wanted to kind of share with you in this sort of 20 minutes. I don't know whether if I overgone, Nikki. But yeah, I think we've got a...
Just coming back. Here we go. Thank you.
To be thankful for. And I think we're quite well equipped to deal with the period that we're coming out for, because we've had to be on this horrible, tragic journey. So we've already got some of the skills set, and we can just apply that and maybe, help others in their way. But one thing is, make sure you keep your sort of sanity and your peace of mind, whatever that you need to do that, and don't neglect that, because that's important as a caregiver. And I congratulate all the caregivers out there. You're doing a fantastic job, and I rejoice in your good fortune.
Thank you so much, Urvashi. As always, you blow me away with your inspiration. You are completely inspirational to listen to and inspirational to others. And yeah, I would just like to reiterate to all you caregivers out there, please congratulate yourself because you are doing a fantastic job.